those of you who it is your first time, I'll give you a quick overview of what Refresh Miami is. We are a nonprofit. We are the largest tech entrepreneur organization in Florida. We have about 9,000 members. We host monthly educational events with speakers, and we also, obviously, with some networking. Our goal is to really grow the South Florida tech community and foster innovation and education. Quick show of kind of who the team is. I'll introduce Brian in a bit, who's our founder. But Peter, can you wave your hand? There, he's in the back. And then Josh. He checked everyone in, so hopefully you were nice to him. We're kind of a lean and mean team, but that's the four of us. If you have any questions, feel free to come up to us after the talk. And also, at 10 a.m. tomorrow, you should be receiving a survey. Please fill it out. Let us know what we can do to improve. It's the only way we'll get better. So it's quick 5 questions, and it'll be painless, I hope. I'm going to be introducing the speakers in just a second. If sometimes people might be in the back and having side conversations, can you step outside if you need to, because you don't notice it, but the kind of sound carries to the front. So we don't want to interrupt the panelists. So please step outside if you need to make a conversation. And thank you to Building for hosting us tonight. I know many people have said how amazing the space is, so if you thank these guys, this guy over here for it. Oh no, you? Yeah, you want to say? Tell us a little bit, he'll give us a little brief overview of what Building is.
I hope you know what Building is, if not, we're not doing a good job. I'm Pod Trasco, I'm the founder and one of the owners here at Building. Welcome you guys, I don't want to make this a commercial. We like having cool companies work in our space, and that's really about it. We try to help you if we can, but really we just want to provide a place where you can come and work, and you know, we like to really curate the membership here to make sure that everyone is like-minded and really all about just building cool stuff, because that's what we like to do. So welcome, and we're happy to host you guys here tonight. So thanks.
I'm going to introduce Brian, who is the founder of Refresh, and he will introduce our speakers for tonight.
I think you're introducing everybody. Go for it.
Well, we have Carlos from Google, we have Jose from MasterCard, and Marco from Twitter.
Yes. Awesome. So, thank you everybody for showing up tonight, braving the rain and all the weather. And I also want to thank you guys for coming together and volunteering, helping us curate this panel. So the purpose of tonight's event is to give you guys sort of an overview into what's going on in Latin America, and especially in mobile, and how mobile is changing the landscape of technology, e-commerce, and effectively the community as a whole. And so that's why we brought together all these awesome experts. And this is going to be more of an informal sort of discussion, and so if anyone has a question or something they want us to talk about, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll incorporate it into the flow. So it's too loud. So you guys want to introduce yourselves and say what you do and all that.
Thanks, Brian. First of all, guys, great turnout tonight. Thank you. Hello.
You're on.
No, I don't think so. No. Okay. Guys, thanks for the turnout. Really great. Thanks to Building and Refresh. Building's a great space, by the way. So please support the community, which is great. I work for Twitter. We opened offices here in Miami back in June, so we're coming up on our year. I'm kind of a Miami native. I've been here for quite some time now. It's my second stint back in Miami. Before Twitter, I was at ESPN and been in the media and advertising space, focused in Latin America for probably the majority of my career. And at Twitter doing the same thing, really helping advise brands such as MasterCard and other ones on how to make sure the platform is helping them achieve whatever objectives they have, right? And create relationships with the consumers and build better brands, right? So working with MasterCard and other brands. But really excited to be here tonight. Really want to make this an informal chat. We've known each other for a long time up here, so it's a very good casual environment. But if there's questions, we like to feed off of it. I'm definitely not the expert in a lot of things, so I'll definitely just field it as best as I can and work with the group. And by the way, hopefully a lot of people here on Twitter, you can follow me at MABOT. Always publishing stuff about the industry in Latin America if you're interested. So.
Well, I'm Jose Vicente Luque. I'm basically the MasterCard head of media for Latin America. As Marco was saying, we know each other for a long time. I've been on the media agency side for almost 15 years, and now MasterCard for getting closer to a year. I'm happy to be here, never been here before, so thank you, Marco and Brian, for the invitation. So yeah, it's just to have a quick chat, and hopefully you learn a bit of our experience, and feel free to ask any questions as we progress.
Thank you guys, and happy to be here as well. Thank you, Marco, for the invitation and reaching out. It's great to come together in events like this. Originally from Venezuela, I've been in the industry for about 15 years. Did the US Hispanic multicultural thing for about 10 years. And then I moved to Miami just because I wanted to live here and because I actually believe that the opportunity in Latin America is much bigger than anything that we can do in the US. And I think this is the perfect place to be to make that happen. Glad to have this crowd, and hopefully I can contribute with some ideas and thoughts to the conversation.
Cool. So where do you guys want to start?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, I guess the focus is mobile, right? LATAM, mobile. We could just talk a little bit about, if you guys agree, a little bit about some of the things that we're seeing, some of the habits that we're seeing, how Latin America distinguishes itself a little bit differently than some of the other markets, understand a little bit of the size of the market, right, where a lot of the opportunity is. From what I understand, a lot of the crowd is maybe a mix of, again, young entrepreneurs looking to LATAM to seek, is there potential out there as well? Also media and advertising executives that work in the space. And also South Florida, again, entrepreneurs that are looking, is Miami this tech hub that we're trying to build and how LATAM influences that? So I mean, again, so what we're seeing in Latin America is that mobile is obviously a very fast-growing space. We're going to get a lot of context from the side of media and advertising because that's our scope and our wheelhouse. So we're not much on the VC side or how much money's flowing in. We'll be honest, that's not our big space, I don't think. So, we'll talk about, right now on the media and advertising side, Latin America for mobile advertising is a pretty big market, right? It's about a $2 billion market right now that clients like MasterCard share spending advertising on mobile, web, apps, and looking to seek to connect with consumers. Penetration right now on smartphones, as you can imagine, very high growth rate. There's about 188 million connected Latin Americans on smartphones right now. That's about a 45% penetration. You can imagine what's an interesting point on that is Brazil leads the number because of the scale and the size of Brazil, right, the absolute numbers, followed by Mexico and Argentina. But there's interesting, curious points about, like, when you look at Chile, for instance, they've got a 60% penetration in smartphones, right? So definitely don't have the mass size or the population size of some of the other bigger countries, but the adoption rate on smartphones in Chile is becoming leads the region by far. Same thing with Colombia, for instance, 57%. And Argentina, right? So we are seeing mass adoption on some of the bigger countries, and we're seeing that catapult pretty quickly. But some of the smaller ones aren't falling behind, right? Relative to the population, the penetration is getting there pretty quickly. And that also, I think, plays a lot into how they approach their consumer strategies on how to build their brands, right?
From a media perspective, I think it's not anymore a niche channel, as it was projected, and there's always that discussion of the penetration of mobile devices, smartphone versus feature phone. But what we have seen in Latin America is that jump straight from desktop, from non-desktop to really to mobile. And the adoption that US push to Latin America is tremendous. What we see here as an advertiser is how we anticipate that change with our current ecosystem and how we build our products around that ecosystem. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we have in the region, how the product and services also catch up with that, which is not there yet. In terms of infrastructure, I think it's getting better. Obviously not compared to the US, but it's still a great opportunity. And we're not even nowadays we're not even targeting mobile or desktop. We're going right for the audience. And that audience is basically in mobile. And I think these two guys will share impressive stats of how consumers actually consume media content that is all through mobile. So,
No, I think, and you gave the number before, and I like to put numbers into perspective, and that's almost 200 million people. That's almost the US in mobile. And I don't think anybody will argue that mobile is first and foremost the window to most consumers in this country. So why won't you take advantage of the same size, the same scale in a market like Latin America that is less developed? And what that means opportunity, and that means opportunity for you guys as entrepreneurs to come on top of what already exists and build. As a company, our strategy, and this is public knowledge, is being mobile first. And it is that not just because mobile is sexy, this is exciting, this is new, it's because that's where our consumers are. And we see it every day with our numbers. I mean, when you look at the video consumption of YouTube in some of our key markets, is already happening more mobile than is happening on any other device. When you look at search queries, which is another important stat for us, most of the searches are coming from mobile, not from other devices. And what we find is that you think, well, but Google, Twitter, Facebook, you guys are already doing it. What are we going to do in this space? And the reality of the matter, and I see some familiar faces from some of my friends at the agencies, is that when it comes down to actually getting stuff done, there are a lot of white spaces that are not being covered by anybody. So we have some solutions that we can offer, but there are some spaces that when we turn around and we want to do something, it's like, well, who's going to do this? And sometimes we don't even find a company in Latin America that can do it. Developing an app for a client, you'll be surprised the amount of demand there is for that, and the little supply that there is quality developers in the region. So I think that to me is just consumers are there, brands are going to go after those consumers, and that means there is a business opportunity for people to come in and build on top of some of the solutions that are already there. So we see this as a huge white space where there is a lot of stuff that is going to be happening in the next few years. If you have any additional
I think you built some really good point on the app world. And as advertisers, I think everyone wants to build an app now. But how many apps do we really use every day? You know, we have the Twitter, the Facebook, the WhatsApp, or other apps that are very single-minded in a way that use it once a month. So I think it's, on your point, it's how you build an ecosystem outside the apps as well, but you provide the service. And that's where the advertiser wants to be. When that consumer is actually on it.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. We move also from the apps. Apps are good for services, but on your day-to-day, they're not necessarily completely relevant.
You know, one of the things that occurs to me, you were talking about context. It's interesting, or it's important to look at how mobile is the primary computing device for a huge percentage of these people. Like, they completely skip the desktop era, so to speak. And so, by comparing total e-commerce or total online spend in the U.S. to total mobile or mobile to mobile, that's sort of disingenuous, because a lot of that e-commerce that would have happened on desktop had that era occurred in Latin America is now doing purely on mobile, right? You know, so with that in mind, what are you guys seeing more mobile first players that are native to Latin America winning in the markets versus the I don't know, the U.S. companies trying to force something down the throat?
So, I think you see a little bit of a combination of both in the space, right? So you'll see, so it gets in Twitter's case, we've had presence in Latin America for about 2.5 years now, almost 3 years, out of Brazil. Most of us start in Brazil, Google, Facebook, because of the size of the market, both ad market and the size of the connected population. So you'll see Twitter open office in Brazil, it's had there, now we have an office in Colombia, Mexico, and now Miami, right? Google has offices far more reach in Latin America, so it's Facebook.
So are we.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere, right? Yeah, but you guys, we're everywhere.
And so you'll see that, right? And you'll see Spotify as well, and global brands like Uber, right? Uber's doing a huge initiative in Latin America, right? Really opening up market across market, and actually see you talk about e-commerce, right? You see companies like Amazon now making a push into Mexico, right? And really trying to break into Mexico as well. So you see not only the global clients seeing the size of the opportunity and sort of dipping their toes in, but then you see like local brands, right? I mean, there's some, I'm sure you guys that are into the Latin American scene have seen companies like on the fintech side, like Nubank, right? Or Avienda, which is like an Argentine startup, right? That's trying to position themselves as the Amazon of Latin America as well, or Netshoes. You'll see some big ones. Or there's 99 Taxis, right, which was a very safe transportation solution when, remember, safety is a concern when taking taxis in Latin America sometimes, right? So it's a startup that started before the Uber started coming to the market out of a necessity from the market, right? So you'll see that, right? I read the other day about one that's kind of the Tinder of Latin America, right? Which I think is Dating Latam, which is like a Peruvian company that's starting out as well, that's getting some traction. But you're starting to see a little bit of a balance between the global brands really diving in deep into Latam, and also like this bubbling effect of really talented innovation coming from Latin America. And that's good for several reasons, whether it's a huge stimulus coming from local, Medellin's got a great startup community, Santiago's got a great one, Mexico's got a really good startup community as well. So there's a lot of investments coming to help really nurture and create that community.
And I think that's where Miami actually can play a role. I know that this market tends to fluctuate a lot and has suffered from an advertising perspective a lot, but I think the talent is here. It's here. You know, the thinking is here, and it's the connection is there. Like Miami and South Florida is, even though they're trying to move it to Atlanta, but it's the opportunity is here. So how we take it to the ground, and I think that's the key where I think these type of communities can bring to the table.
There's a question in the back of my shirt.
Carlos, maybe you can address this in the rest of the group. Like, one of the things that Google has been doing here in the U.S. is getting into the smart cities. And one of the big challenges in Latin America is connectivity. It's great that we have all these devices, but what about the connectivity, access to Wi-Fi, data plans that are very limited in the Latin American countries? What are you guys' plans to address that in Latin America?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, and I think all of our companies at one point or another have some sort of a solution for this, because it's a common problem that we're trying to solve, both from a mission perspective on what we're trying to do in life as a company, but also from a business perspective, because it makes sense to have more people connected. And I don't know if you've heard of a program called Project Loom. It's a project that we've launched and we're piloting in different regions. It's not in Latin
Project 5?
Project Loom,
No.
like balloon.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's something that is not in Latin America yet, but it's something that we've tested in some other continents. And basically what it is providing access to the internet in basically remote places where an antenna or a cable just makes no sense from a practical standpoint. And what we do is we literally launch these balloons to the stratosphere, and with the different air currents that are out there, you're able to manage to keep that balloon in a certain area and driving it, and that balloon basically allows you to provide that connectivity to that area. So this is something that we're doing right now in some places that it will probably make a whole lot of sense for Latin America. We don't have any concrete plans for the region, but obviously anything that we do at Google, we might test it in one place, and if it works, then the idea is to obviously scale it and roll it out globally. So that's something that we're doing to help with connectivity. The other thing that we do, and because that helps for remote places, but the truth of the matter is that even in the heart of Mexico City or Sao Paulo, is you don't get the internet access that you want to get for the price that you want to get it. And a lot of it has to do with market forces that they're not as strong as we wish they were in Latin America as they might be in some other markets. And basically incentivizing competition in the industry is a way to do that. And we've seen that in Latin America. As you see more competitors getting into the market, people start getting creative with the data plans. In Brazil, they have a plan for Facebook for $1 a day. You can access Facebook. AT&T came into Mexico, and that really helped the market move forward. So that kind of stuff, from an industry perspective, incentivizing competition is something else that we do. In Latin America, we haven't done anything like in the US, where we have launched Google Fiber, where we've actually put our hands into something that literally incentivizes competition. But that's another venue that we have as a company to promote that. So it is one of the things that we definitely need to push forward. because the more consumers are connected, basically the more economic opportunity we're going to be providing in our continent, which is what we want to do.
And then just to add, that reflects a challenge from an advertising perspective, because we're very spoiled here when you scroll down on your newsfeed, your video automatic play. In Latin America, that doesn't happen. So the user experience is in some way broken, and we want to, close the gap on that end because we want to get our message there. So I think that also will help eventually.
Yeah, like a symbol, just to that point, to reinforce that, like what Twitter does, for instance, to be more conscious of the data plans, which again are still somewhat expensive. For instance, a simple feature like video autoplay, which is really big right now, it isn't enabled unless you're on Wi-Fi. So if you're on Wi-Fi, you enable a video autoplay, but if you're not, you got to click video to play, right? Because being conscious that if it's on autoplay, you're going to start to consume data, right, from the users. But yeah, I mean, I think we're all trying to push. I think Carlos really put out a good point. Is a lot of these countries, especially the major ones, were run by duopolies, monopolies. So I think healthy competition in the market, which we're seeing much more now of, is helping to bring phone subsidies a lot better. So subsidizing the phone, getting barrier of entry to a nice smartphone is becoming much more attainable, subsidized for contracts. And the data plans, again, are becoming much more attainable. And this we're seeing for cable television as well, right? We're seeing DirecTV making big plays in it as well, and some other players.
So down to the triple play. I remember back in 2009, even internet, mobile penetration were on the lows, single digits. Nowadays you're closer to 70% penetration, so that's huge. Just starting with big companies getting into the business, healthy competition, and at least so we move away from the internet cafes to the mobile adoption and internet penetration.
So you guys are talking about the autoplay video and all that stuff. How does that affect campaigns, like from a marketing perspective? Like how do you guys tailor your messaging and all your campaigns to each individual country or to the market?
It's huge. It has a huge impact. I don't know, there's a recent study of the attention of a human being is less than 3 seconds, so it's even lower than a goldfish.
Yeah, that's great.
So we're looking at an average of 5 to 8 seconds of a goldfish attention, and human beings are down to 3. And this is just in less than 15 years, when we used to be 12 seconds.
So we should be worried
That
about the
loading?
goldfish taking over.
The goldfish are definitely taking over. Yeah, I mean, you combine that, we always share that stat's a great stat, and you combine that with, I think the other stat I hear is, we have, as users, we unlock our phones on an average of about 150 times a day. Like, it just becomes like this innate behavior, right? You're just consistently unlocking the phone, and then you couple that with an attention span of 3-4 seconds. It makes a challenge for the brands, right, to really drive effective messaging. Right? So yeah, on the video side. But what we do see, and you also talk about that, YouTube's the biggest player in the video space. You're starting to see the video is becoming the most effective form to tell stories for brands, to tell messages. And the interesting thing is understanding the behavior, the attention spans, the stories, the way the brands are telling stories are completely shifting, right? There's still opportunities for the 2-minute P&G Love You Mom Olympic spot, which I don't know if you guys have seen it by now. It's beautiful, the new Reel spot. Very special opportunity. People expect this spot to come out every Olympics. But what we're seeing is you can drive an effective message, a brand recall, as little as 67 seconds already, right? So millennials, when you're scrolling, and you have that thumb stopping power, within 60 seconds with aided recall, you can already say, well, that was Avengers movie or Captain America movie spot I saw in the video. So you're starting to see a shift in behavior from feed-based systems, and you can also talk about the YouTube side, but it's interesting, and if you're a brand, like, tell a story in a second, 2 seconds, it's a challenge, right?
Yeah, I think just adding a little bit to that, I think obviously attention is a gift, and consumers have the power to choose where to spend their time, and with that basically flips the industry on its head, and the way that we used to think about connecting with consumers and communicating with consumers has totally changed, and we need to be a lot more engaging, we need to be a lot more targeted, we need to be a lot more relevant, and the good news is that technology is there, and all of these little things that I mentioned, they all represent a business opportunity, because the platforms are there, but you can always, again, build on top of that. You can always build, for example, data. You can probably talk about that and how much you're probably lacking on data that you want to have in Latin America. There are literally two types of data. First-party data, which is the data that companies have, and it's data that is usually really hard to use. Then you have second-party data, which is usually the data that technology companies like us have. The third-party data in Latin America is virtually non-existent, and that's a huge business in the US. Why not build something in Latin America that does that? You buy it, you make our products better, and all of a sudden you have a business proposition right there. So I think that's the beauty of all of it, is the theory, the frameworks are there, but there are a lot of holes in LATAM that we can take advantage of it, and that's just one example, I guess.
And going beyond advertising, I think because it's also is a bit broken, the whole experience. Us as a brand, we also want to move away from the push communication. So we want to drive priceless possibilities. Maybe I'm doing my sales pitch.
Okay, sell it.
But it's important. So how can we build that bridge from the ad unit to really enabling the consumers to that experience? And I think that's a huge opportunity in terms of, not only from a payment perspective, but from a service perspective. And that's what makes your brand differentiate from others and more relevant.
So, Jose, along those lines, hello. Who runs this place? Jose, along those lines of as a brand and those challenges that you mentioned, what are some of the metrics for success that you guys use to keep these guys honest and to continue coming back to them to buy media from them? So, I mean, obviously that's a loaded question. There's a lot of different metrics that you guys look at for different campaigns. But what are some of those things that you rely on to be able to continue to buy?
I can simplify it because, as you said, there's a lot of metrics, and that's also the challenge that we have in the industry. When you throw a lot of data, you don't know how to read it, and we've been moving to the data is the new goal, but nobody knows how to read it, and nobody knows how to use it. It's like when you went to university, then you were expecting to have as much sex as possible, but that never happened. So that in a way, that's also like from a data perspective. But I think the key, and to go to that simplified answer, is to get as much closer to the funnel as possible and build, measurements that allows you to see whether you convert or not. And that continues to be a challenge. So obviously you standardize with your reach and with your click-throughs, with your engagements. But at the end of the day, an engagement and a like or a share, a retweet, that has a value, but not really a business value. When you talk to your finance guys about a share and a like, they're going to tell you, where's the business? So it's important for a brand metric, but the key is to try to get as much close to the funnel to prove that effectiveness.
Yeah, just to add to that, and I'd love Jose's perspective on that. I think Jose is absolutely right. I think listen, the holy grail of advertising, right, what differentiates advertising from marketing is advertising should hopefully influence all of us to take an action to lead to either a purchase or some sort of recall or awareness of that brand, right? But hopefully to a sale, right? Advertising is supposed to lead to a sale and action and impact. In the US, it's interesting because to your point about data, you have companies like Datalogix, right? That's literally plugged in to the sales process, right? And actually, when you check out a product in the store, you can actually know, okay, it was recorded by Datalogix. So there's companies like Google and Facebook and others, and even us, that now are starting to correlate sales data with advertising, right? And finally closing the loop, right? So if you do a campaign with us, X, it should hopefully lead to this percentage of sales lift, right? It should hopefully move the needle, and that's kind of what we should be going as an industry, right? Where other mediums in the past, whether it's radio, outdoor, print, it was very difficult for them to close that loop. In LATAM, because we don't have the sales data, there isn't a big aggregator like a Datalogix that aggregates sales data to close that loop, it's difficult. So we work with the funnel, right? So upper funnel objectives like brand awareness, intent, consideration, all the way down. Again, if we can push sale or the holy grail, like advocacy, not only did you sell something, but man, the user loved you so much that they're actually advocating about you on Twitter or Google or whatever. I mean, that's what we try to work with. And we work to measure those things with the clients, which is that. I don't know if you have any perspective.
I agree 100%. I mean, I think that's what we're all trying to do at the tech companies. When you look at Facebook, you look at Twitter, you look at Google, we're all trying to come up with models to prove the ROI for advertising, and we're all develop our own. Some of them are our own, some of them are partnerships with companies like Nielsen that are out there, but that's precisely the point. And it's very close. That's what's really exciting. It's like, I think I'm going to get to see it before I stop doing what I'm doing, which is be able to go to an advertiser and tell them, this investment that you gave me, return this amount of sales for you, and what else could be more amazing than that?
Yeah, and just sorry to step up. I mean, and there are products that already exist in LATAM, for instance, and this is maybe my sales pitch. But there's products, like for instance, we have a product called MAP, which stands for Mobile App Promotion. And if you guys, obviously, those of you who use Twitter and you're scrolling through the feed, there's a carousel. And there's a carousel, you'll see companies like Spotify, Uber have an ad unit that says install in it, right? If you click on that install, it takes you natively to the Android or iOS store and you download. And the people who are paying for that ad unit are literally paying per download, right? So it's a performance product. You just pay if the user downloads, and if they don't download, then you don't pay, right? But if you're trying to drive installs of your app, that's a great product that drives performance, right? That's a performance driving application, right?
There's a question right here in the middle.
Yeah. If you're not a Fortune 500 company and you developed an app, let's say for Latin America, what's the best way to get brands or advertisers, assuming that you are not superstar, rock star, and you don't have millions of people? Where do you go first? Do you go to local big American brands that want to come into Latin America? Do you go to small American brands? Do you go to local brands in LATAM? What would you do in such a situation?
I think, so, if I can interject, even though I'm not one of the people selling these ads, or ad space, I think the challenge is for you, like, I don't know, it all depends on context of size, because if you're going to Ford and you have 10,000 or 100,000 users, unless those 100,000 users are super targeted to their, like, who they're trying to target, they're not going to be as interested, because there's costs associated with every campaign, aside from the actual cost of buying the campaign. You know, like Jose's not going to run a campaign that's $500 because that costs them $10,000 in overhead just to get that campaign going. So you have to think of that in context.
And it's going back to the metrics, the question of the metrics, and what differentiation you can bring. Because if you compare with cost, even with YouTube or with Twitter, he's in disadvantage of YouTube. So, but what he brings to the table, YouTube doesn't bring. So that's, you need to find your niche, and you need to find the industry you're playing, and then do the trial. And at the end of the day, when you show results, then the money will follow.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I'll add to that is, why are you building this app? Is it because you're doing something that is interesting to you? Is the business, is advertising the side business, or is that the main purpose of building the app? Because if advertising is just a way to monetize it, and you're focusing on something else, and you're building the app for other reasons, and you're monetizing it through other vehicles, maybe leave the advertising to other people. And what I mean by that is you can plug into an exchange, you can plug into a network, and they'll basically just run ads for you in there. You might not get as much money for your ad, but net at the end of the day, all the time that you save, because that's not your focus, it will be put to work in what's important to you and your priority. So I think that's important, and I think to this point, it is really hard to build an advertising business on an app.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have an AdMob and DoubleClick and all these other properties. So, I mean, you get the power of the network because you're getting as part of a campaign with 1,000 other apps, or, you know, whatever it is, and selling 10 million impressions, where you might not have that inventory available to you. And so that's, you know, a quick way to fill your inventory and monetize, even if it's not at your optimal CPM or whatever the metric is now, you know. But, you know, I mean, there's a lot of different options, I think.
And just think about what makes your experience special. Think about the audience you're building for. And there's usually a brand that seeks to build a relationship with that audience, right? There is always the mass reach play, right? That's easy, it's cost efficiency, mass reach. But I am a believer in the premium space of niche. And I think there's always going to be an audience for, in a brand wanting to connect. You just have to do a really good job in selling to that brand why your audience is very unique and special and different, and you can't find it anywhere else, right? So that's just, think about that.
The only thing that I'll add to that is, I think that brand will find you probably as fast as you find it. Because if you are in that business, let's say you're writing about fishing, your app is about fishing, you're passionate about that, and that brand is immediately going to be automatic. You're probably not even going to have to sell it. That one brand that you want to have a relationship with directly is just going to be there, I think. And the rest is just make it scalable.
I think there's a question in the back. Yeah, your guy.
Okay. How do you think that small companies, startups, can compete against a big company like Google, for example? Google now has everything already. I'm a developer. How do you can compete? For example, Google give you for $9.99 Google Play Music, YouTube with advertising. When you have Google now, that you can say, hey Google, what's this music? So it's like replacing Shazam. You have Google Maps that you can explore around everywhere and you can see everything. How can small companies can compete against a monster like Google, for example? So because I've been thinking about like, okay, I want to create something that is not created. You search Google and everything is integrated. You know what I mean? Advertising, I hate ads. And I came to Google, so I don't see advertising.
I think, and take this more as a personal answer, I mean, not here representing Google, but I think it doesn't matter. If you're looking for an idea of something that hasn't been created, that is not there, chances are that it is probably already created.
Yeah.
And if that's where you're at, my suggestion would be more build on top of what's already there to make it, everything has a whole, and everything has something that could be better. And if you build on top of that little piece, it might look like a little piece if you compare it to Google, but to you as an entrepreneur, that could be a huge business. And those opportunities, I think, are usually better, in my opinion. On the other side, if you have a great idea, I mean, Facebook came after Google, Twitter came after Google, and they've built great businesses. And we compete, and they've been able to compete, and they start from nowhere. So I think to compete at that level, if you want to somehow create something that doesn't exist, it has to be that. It has to be an idea that is revolutionary and that is totally changing an industry. I mean, Uber, Airbnb, so there are a lot of companies that have turned industries on their heads and build them from the ground up. So that's totally possible, and this company started from nothing. But at the same time, there is the other side of you can also cooperate with the big players if you want, and you can make money at that if you have an idea that will make some of the stuff that we offer better. And there is plenty of that. And as you probably know, Google sometimes ends up acquiring, partnering with a lot of these companies because it makes sense to our business. And as much resources as we have and as many engineers as we have, sometimes people can be faster and making something that we thought about better. And we're okay with that, and we're willing to play.
Just to add, and I think the key is to be consumer-centric, because technology, everything is invented. Our behavior tends to change, maybe not. But if you tap into a necessity from a consumer perspective, then you have a more chance to succeed.
And just to add, I think the innovation will, from the big companies, right, will come that we do a lot of our own innovation internally from our engineers, some of the best engineers in the world. But if you look at it, guys, they're constantly, Google and Twitter are seeking for new and alternative ideas, whether when we acquire Periscope, right, or Vine, or Mobile. There are so much that we do internally, but we also recognize that there are companies, smaller ones, that move faster and are more agile, that we always keep an eye out for as well, right? And there's hunger to learn also from people that are coming up with new ideas. Not everything can be baked internally inside the house, right?
I think another thing that's important, like you're competing with the Googles or Twitters or MasterCards of the world, like Google's not going to go after a business that's only going to make them 10 million a year, because that's like one day's rounding error on their earnings, So, and also things like music are really not actually high margin businesses, So like if you look at the music industry, like Spotify is the only clear winner, because there isn't that much value, that's excess value to be captured.
Yeah, that's true. But for example, I have used AdMob to put advertising on my application. So that's what I think. like if you see from like Google like provides a lot of different tools for you to integrate, or for people that is non-tech can get money from showing advertising forever. I love Google, I love Android, and I'm okay to it, but it's like that's what I think. How can small fishes compete against the big one? Or when they
I think everyone's a David versus a Goliath at some point in their lifespan.
Don't take discouraged. Everyone loves the underdog.
Yeah. All right, let's go. Yeah.
I've been working in the mobile industry for the last like 20 years, and as you guys said at the beginning, the mobile industry in Latin America is managed by the carriers, and it's in Latin America, it's all about prepaid, right? It's 80-90% prepaid in Latin America. One question there, what types of products are you guys seeing that can enable or can help a user in Latin America manage his data? So if I'm going to download something, or if I'm going to download a video, how many kilobits or how many megabits am I going to be using to be able to download this? And how do I manage my prepaid card in the data space? Are you seeing any types of products in that area? That's the first question. And the second question, what type of advertising, or are you seeing advertising agencies transforming themselves to becoming micro-moment advertising agencies, where they really see that moment as the moment that they need to capture for a brand?
I'll take the second one because I'll go for that to be the case. I think micro moments, we can call it a million different things.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? It's hard
Oh,
to hear.
sorry.
Sorry. I don't know if you have a microphone.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot, and if I don't do it justice, please let me know. So he's had a lot of experience in the mobile industry in Latin America, and his first question was about, have we seen anything that is helping consumers manage one of their biggest issues, which is manage their data? Because most of the consumers are prepaid. It's usually because of obviously budget limitations and how do I manage my data. And the second question was about advertising agencies, and if their business model was evolving more into a micro-moments type of business model where we're focusing on capturing consumer intent when it's happening. I don't know if that. Okay, so and I was going to take the second one because we love the micro-moments narrative, and we're a firm believer because that's where consumers are living today. And like I said, I would love for agencies to be there. And I think, yes, I think a lot of agencies are starting to think mobile first, not micro moments, but yes, mobile first. We've had a lot of conversations with our partners, and they do it for the same reasons that we do it. Consumers are going there, and the business of an agency is obviously help brands connect with consumers, and hopefully, as Marco was saying, turn that into a sell eventually. And to do that, you have to engage with them in the moments that matter. And those happen to be today micro moments, small moments, usually on the go, usually not part of a funnel anymore. We're more of a cycle that is really not a cycle because it doesn't repeat itself. It's more like, I heard it from a conference that I was attending, and the guy from LinkedIn was saying it looks more like switches. When you look at it, it's just basically a bunch of holes of something that came in and out, and it has no pattern to it. That's usually how the thinking process of a consumer is looking like, at least in our view today. It's like switches, it has no pattern, and it's little points where they're nibbling in different points of pieces of information to make their final decision. So I do think agencies are moving in that direction. I do think advertising agencies are moving away from the broadcast model where I'm just going to push a message out there and hope for something to happen, and that's being driven mainly by their clients, because their clients need to move boxes, transactions, whatever it is that they're trying to sell, and that's very encouraging. But it's hard because, like with any other business model, business models are set up in a way, and where you're trying to change that. And especially because usually what happens is business models are changed by an outsider. And I think the good news in the advertising agency business is that I've seen agencies evolve with their model before an outsider comes in and changes that. Although you still see outsiders like consulting firms, McKinsey, Accenture, IBM, they're all developing their digital marketing practices. And those practices are being developed with a business model that is totally different from the advertising agency business model. But they haven't succeeded at doing what advertising agencies do. So I do believe that advertising agencies are going to prevail in this industry. They're going to evolve their business model, and their practices, as I mentioned before, are already there, doing the right thing for the consumers at for their clients. So,
Yeah, I just to finish, I agree. I mean, I think there's an intent or a recognition from the advertising agencies in LATAM, if you want to call it micro moments, but to start thinking of attribution modeling, right? So to start thinking, okay, well, where can I really attribute that micro moment of impact, right? Was it because I saw a TV ad that started to generate awareness? Or was it as in the store and I was just flipping through my feed and then that last click led to the sale? So I think clients and agencies, they haven't figured it out yet, right? But they really want to see, okay, within the entire experience of the consumer, where different medias and different micro moments or experiences are leading to that final transaction or impact. So I think there's an interest there. The data needs to get us to track the attribution and see where it can happen. But I think it's an interesting space and time where again data and analytics are coming much more into play. Which is great. On the second question, I personally haven't seen much. It's a great point. We do some things. I know Facebook does some things like entry level, like you had mentioned about the $1 access to Facebook, or Twitter actually will partner with some of the operators to give like free access to Twitter without impacting their data plan. For like a certain experience, not the full Twitter experience, but like a certain Twitter experience. So kind of like getting them into the platform, getting them connected to the web, and then if they want the full Twitter experience, then they can go ahead and unlock their data plans. But yeah, I don't know.
You guys, you
All at the same time.
Hi, I have an adventure travel app, and I want to reach upscale people in the top markets about Spanish and Portuguese. I'd like them to download the app directly, but with all these ad blockers now, especially with Apple, what would you suggest as a way to be able to make that happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think it comes down to relevancy. So I think ad blocking happens because us consumers, I'm a consumer too, if you get annoyed with something, you don't want to see it, you don't want to device this year, then you're probably going to turn into an ad blocker system. And the funny thing is that ad blocking is somehow prevailing and its adoption is increasing. But even when you look at the numbers of people that use ad blocking, that doesn't mean that they use it 100% of the time. They might have it, they might turn it on or off. And I think what we're doing as companies, we have our strategies, Twitter has them, Facebook has them, a lot of the technology companies have them. We're working towards progressive advertising. So it's like we're asking consumers first, do you want to engage with this or not? We're giving consumers choice. We're being relevant. We're making sure we're targeting things to the right people. So I think if you do all of those different things, all of a sudden advertising is not an annoyance. It's more of a value to the consumer, and they're going to be willing to engage with it. So because if you reach the right person who is into your app and is into adventure travel, even if they have an ad blocking system, they're not going to use it when they're engaging with you because they want to come to you because you're giving something that's valuable to them. So I think I would be worried if I was a company that was developing technology or something that is just meant to be broadcasting stuff to people and that is not relevant to them. But in a niche market where you're building something that is relevant, I think you're probably one of the safest places that you can be because people are going to come to you because you're interesting. So I think that's
just adding, because I think the challenge that you're going to have is how you get the most downloads. You're going to spend a lot of money for it. So think of not only on the app, but how can it be mobile first, mobile responsive. Not necessarily you have to be an app. So the challenge you have is how you mirror, how you migrate your audience that are mobile responsive to the app. So it depends on the experience that you bring. If that app is built for a greater experience, then the app makes sense. Otherwise, move away from that, because it's going to be easier for you to direct your consumers to that mobile-ready experience rather than download the app, then to get the experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have both. It's both the website and apps.
But you're lucky. I mean, travel, adventure, that's great content, right? So to your point, Carlos, like relevancy, we're all pushing to that, right? None of us should receive ads that we don't want to receive, or messages we shouldn't want to receive. And that's definitely going to happen, right? Personalization, customization, you're in the end going to get exactly what you want to see. But hopefully the goal is that these guys are creating, because they've got a UEFA Champions sponsorship, or because they've got amazing priceless moments that they're communicating with Justin or Pharrell, Justin Timberlake. They're moments that are relevant to you. So you no longer see it as an ad, but you see it as, you know what, wow, I like Pharrell, he does something cool with MasterCard, and that's relevant to me, I don't see it as an ad. Or they have the UEFA Champions highlights, and I like UEFA Champions, and that's great. So relevancy, I think, is what we're shifting. And if you've got adventure travel, it's great, right? Everybody wants to see travel.
Partner with the big guys, because I think you can add something that they don't have scale, or they don't have the bandwidth to, but you have
That's
the
what we do,
service.
yeah, we have a more specialized like that.
I mean, that's sort of like you guys are enabling these experiences, you know, by sponsoring Justin Timberlake or the Champions League or whatever it is, you know, because you're no longer going for interruption advertising, you know, you're going to augment the experience.
But it's also hard for, you know, we also have another problem that is priceless cities, which is trying to give that priceless moment on every city in the world. And most of you don't know that we have priceless Miami. So that's the challenge that we also have as advertisers, how we get my message out there. So don't think that you're the only one that is suffering.
Okay.
So the topic of tonight was supposed to be the future of mobile, right? So why don't we talk for a few minutes about where you guys see this going? Like, what do you think the marketplace is like in 2017, 2019, or beyond? I mean, do you guys want to take a stab at this? Just sort of like...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of the themes that we've talked about this evening, I think will play into what we see in the future, right? I mean, this last one we're talking about, I think personalization, right, or relevancy to all of us as consumers, right? That is definitely going to shift, right? We should not be impacted by things that are not of interest to us. But that doesn't mean that, remember, if you think about it, what our platform should be really good at is helping you guys discover new things as well, discoverability, right? So if I like UEFA Champions or football, I should be able to identify or hopefully discover new leagues of soccer that I maybe didn't follow because I like that, right? So I think discoverability and relevancy is definitely going to be a shift that we're going to see more of, definitely. I think something we mentioned earlier, attention, consumer attention is a currency. I think is going to be a big shift, right? So we have 3 seconds, 4 seconds less than a goldfish, right? So imagine that attention span shouldn't be compromised, right? If we're going to dedicate the 3 seconds or hopefully more, it should bring some sort of utility or value to us as consumers, right? And that attention is going to be worth a lot of money to brands and to other people, and even platforms right now. How much time you spend on Twitter versus others is a value to us, right? So I think relevancy, attention, we don't know the other ones, right? There's going to be more people connected on mobile. Keep something in mind as well, guys, for LATAM, which is really interesting. You know, Android is the primary OS, right, in Latin. You know, 80% or 90% of the traffic on mobile is coming through Android, right? So when you guys are designing your strategies on your platforms, you know, I think we think sometimes we think of, you know, iOS first here in the US. But remember, in other parts in developing markets, Android is that leading platform as well. So I kind of want to leave a little bit of that as well.
I think the point there is don't design for what's in your pocket, design for what's in your consumer's pocket. That's basically what it comes down to, because I think sometimes we tend to believe that what we do is what our consumers are going to do, and that's not always the case. I think I'm going to talk a little bit about technology and where we see technology going, and I think we've done a few attempts, some of them not as successful. Probably some of you guys remember Google Glass, which was very interesting, and what we're aiming there is that the wearable piece of what's happening with consumers. So obviously technology now is going into pretty much every single part of your body that you can think about, and we're trying to figure out what's the right fit there for Google. So wearables is something that we definitely see consumers adopting more of. The home, a lot of devices that you don't think would be connected are going to be connected. If you think about why Google would buy a company like Nest, it has to do with that, which is basically what happens in the home and how we can basically plug in all of that data into our system so we can make them more powerful and make our consumers' lives better, which is at the end of the day what we're here for. And then the other piece has to do a little bit with virtual reality, with at the end is an extension of wearables, right? So we see a lot of opportunity there. There is a lot of development that's going to be happening there. We recently launched, I don't know if you guys have seen it, Brush, which is our first application for virtual reality. And there is plenty of stuff that you can build on top of that to make it a business and on the side as well. So a lot of the companies are betting on that, and I think that's going to be a reality in Latin America before we know it. And that's the beauty of all of this. As technology evolves, the adoption cycles in developing markets becomes shorter. So what used to take 10 years to get from the States to Latin America, now it might take 3 years. In the future, it might be 2 years. And so that's beautiful because it makes the business opportunities a reality faster, but it's also a trend because if you think about it, and we're honest with ourselves, a lot of the businesses that we launch in Latin America are somewhat a copycat of something that was developed somewhere else. And before we had 10 years, then we had 4, now we might have 2. So that basically is also pushing us to be faster to market and do more. What that also pushes the market too is that bridge, that bridge is at one point is going to be non-existent, and to the point of one of the questions before, that's going to push us to develop stuff that probably doesn't exist, that is going to come out of Latin America, and I'm sure that's going to happen, and it's happening in the past. So that's kind of a little.
I think building on your point, Carlos, beyond mobile, it's actually where digital is going. And that's the big opportunity. Now, the mobile device is what enables the connectivity with all those digital ecosystems. And I think that's the key, how you build those bridges, how you build that ecosystem, and then the mobile device being your enabler of that.
Cool. All right, I'm going to let Sam pick the next question. No, that's you. You did it so much better.
Talking about devices, so we have lots of consumers using mobile, desktop, tablets, all that stuff. How are you guys tackling cross-device? So we know users usually search on their mobile, then go to the tablet, and then they finally look on their desktop. So how does Twitter and Google tackling cross-device attribution?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So yeah, there's definitely a behavior we're seeing from consumers, right, on cross-platform consumption. Actually, who does a lot of really good work on this is actually ESPN, where I was beforehand, right? And if you think about it, they add a couple of other mediums that we don't play in too much, right? Oh, I mean, we play a lot of TV, but you know, they've got a TV broadcast, right? They've got print, ESPN magazine in some cases, they've got radio, they've got mobile, desktop. I mean, they've got a whole environment of sports experience. And sports pushes you to have multiple touch points, right? Because sports is live, it's immediate. If I want to see the results from last night's game, I'm going to pull out my mobile, right? Or if I'm in front of a bar, I'm going to watch it on the screen. So there is a lot of research being done on consumption habits and how consumers are consuming throughout. Speaking specifically on Twitter, which I think hopefully you guys will all agree, is Twitter has a very special relationship with television, right? Whether you're watching the Oscars and, you know, Leo finally wins his Oscar and you're seeing 450 million tweets per second, which is an amazing, incredible scale. We're starting to measure the correlation between Twitter and television, for instance, and how one is very complementary to the other. So what we tell a lot of our brands is, you know, keep doing TV. TV is an amazing awareness driver. And what we see when you look at a lot of the brand metrics, whether again it's consideration or purchase intent, when you complement them with Twitter, all those metrics tend to rise and tend to lift. Right? Because it's, again, we are seeing that second screen behavior, whatever you want to call it, right? People are watching Game of Thrones, and they are going to see whether Jon Snow lives or dies. Lives, is going to live. So yeah, we are starting to measure that, right? And really trying to advise them either how to get incremental reach, and YouTube has amazing tools to help, you know, talk about incremental reach. How do you enhance frequency? So if you're impacting the same person on TV, how do you take that frequency and keep impacting them when they're on mobile? There's a lot of work being done in that space, a lot of work.
But you need to move away from buying devices, because at the end of the day, as we were saying, each device has a role. So as an advertiser, what you need to do is you end up buying audiences, no matter where they are. And then going back to the micro moment is targeting when you want them to see your brand. So I think that's the key. we're shifting the mindset of the box or the paper to really the behavior of that consumer.
And if I can add to the audiences, at Google we have the luxury of having about 7 products that have about 1 billion or more users globally that at one point or another they are logged into our platform. And we can also track behavior. So with that, basically, to your point, we start forgetting about devices and we can focus on consumers and individual consumers as an aggregate, obviously, because we respect the privacy of these consumers. So with that information, you can pretty much get around the cross-device channel challenge that we used to face in the industry before. So when you combine behavior and logged in users, that's kind of your answer. And when you have scale, then you can use that.
I mean, it depends what you want. It depends what you want, because at the end of the day, if you do want to get those iPhone 6 users, then you can target.
So, and what we're seeing is definitely the audience one is absolutely right. So you can buy a device, right? You can buy the audience you're trying to build a relationship with. But what we are seeing is you're seeing metrics from TV making a big play into the digital world, right? So now people are buying TRPs, right, which are total rating points or gross rating points. They are evaluating cost per rating points, right? So TV language or TV metrics are definitely making their way into the digital space when people are buying video, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter or Facebook. So you're seeing this really interesting shift where digital media experts are now having to learn a lot of the TV language because I get to try to break the barrier not just within the digital space, but finally bringing TV audiences into the digital space as well.
I think you had an interesting stat on that most of the noise on other media it actually drives you search queries.
Oh yeah, so we actually have a product that allows you to do that. But that's the logic. I mean, think about, and that's one that I'll say something contrary to what I said before. Look at what you do. I mean, if you see something on TV or you see something when you're driving, so you might even pull the cell phone to look it up right there, and you're like, why stop you're driving? Don't do that, right? But that's the instinct. I mean, because we know we can find the information right away, we can find more details. So all of these impulses that we get from outdoors, from even other digital mediums are going to drive you. If it was at the right time, at the right moment, to the right person, they're probably going to drive you to action. And we can measure that when we see searches increasing for a certain campaign, product, or place when you're running on a media around it. So,
Guy in the gray suit.
So going back to the future of mobile in Latin America, when I heard you talking, I come from Latin America and recently I went to a conference where we were seeing the usage of mobile devices in Africa. And after texting and taking pictures, the third most important use is making payments, receiving and sending money. How do you see that? Because, I don't know, maybe you, Jose, from MasterCard, have some insight of the usage or where the industry is moving towards in Latin America in regards of sending and receiving money between people.
That's a huge topic for us that unfortunately I cannot comment on it.
I'll help you out
with
with an answer that is not going to get me in trouble either. We developed things that enable that. Email, for example, you guys probably saw that when you could start making payments through Gmail. So it is happening, and I think technology is going to allow that in Latin America. I think when we were talking last night and we were getting acquainted for this panel, we were just talking about how adversity usually drives innovation. And that's what's happening in Africa, right? Like people have needs that are not being fulfilled, and they basically made do with what they have, which is a text message, and they've sent money with that. And all of that is probably going to happen in Latin America. And the nice thing about it is that sometimes we used to tend to look north for ideas, but I mean, you're always looking at the right place too in Africa for some things that could make sense in Latin America. So I don't know if that's much of an answer, but yeah.
We'll take like 1 or 2 more questions before you wrap up.
Yeah, just to build on that, there's obviously a lot of growth in fintech, but the adoption of mobile money has been more rapid in Latin America than it has been in the U.S. So just wondering if you guys see that potentially being sort of an innovation engine for Latin America where applications could be built, for various platforms to solve those problems, and later those would be adopted within the U.S., where Latin America could essentially be the early adopter.
I mean, that's interesting, because like Brazil historically had a more advanced banking system than the U.S. Like they computerized and digitized their banking system before the U.S. has. But I don't know if, I'm not Brazilian, so I don't know if that's going to be the case. But I mean, I think we'll see things that are products of necessity that, you might not be as easy to transfer money between countries in Latin America historically, and then a lot of that technology might come here because it's a more efficient way than using SWIFT or ACH or whatever the mechanisms we have now, and the banks might see it as a cheaper way of operating, and by riding along the blockchain or whatever it is, or an M-Pesa or something like that might appear. Venmo is almost like M-Pesa at some level. But it didn't come out of
It just
America.
seems like there hasn't been, in the U.S. I guess it's not a big enough pain point where we haven't adopted it. If you look at like WeChat in China, the functionality of that compared to some of the messaging platforms here, it's just...
I mean, if you look at the messaging platforms here in the U.S., I think you're seeing a lot of inspiration taken from WeChat, and I think we'll see that maybe in Google with Hangouts or in Twitter and stuff like that, or WhatsApp might adopt some of these things.
There's another huge player, Latin, as well in Asia. And I think that the US strategy is very smart. They let other countries to test it out, when it's ready, they get it.
That's Apple's way, right?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that is going to, I don't have a specific case that I can think of, but if you think about it, I think that the more global that we come, all of our companies are global, and we're very connected, and we're very close even though we're large companies. And to your point, we bring a lot of the stuff that we're developing in other markets to the US, so that's one thing. The other thing is the US as a consumer market is becoming more multicultural. What that means is that you have people from all over the world. So the behaviors that work in Latin America should work for the 50+ million Latins that live in the US. Same for Asian Americans that live here, and you can go down that list. So, and obviously, a lot of us who are Latins who live here, for example, the way that I use WhatsApp, I've never seen an American friend using it that way. But when they see it, they're like, oh, that's pretty cool, I might go with my cousins. So you see, so those kind of things start permeating, and then people start using devices in different ways. And so I think, the more multicultural we are, and the more global we are, all of these things are eventually going to go in all directions, and probably don't even know where it started to be at one point.
Cool.
One more question, you guys pick.
Put your hand up for a while. No, sorry, don't worry.
So, I'm going to stand up, but...
We can take
both of you. I'll take you too, but same time.
So, my agency features the U.S. Hispanic Agency of Record for NFL, and Twitter having just won the digital rights to stream NFL games, which is huge. And huge for us because we also represent two of the other players that were in that race, Amazon and Facebook. So how do you think that Twitter's streaming of these live events and the future of sports will affect the mobile tech industry and the attention span on mobile, given that these games are like 2-hour long games normally you're not spending that much time in one sitting on mobile? How do you think that's going to
Seeing at ESPN, attention shifted to the top 10 highlight reels.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And whereas you can. So yeah, it's okay. So we announced not too long ago, maybe about within a month ago, Twitter announced that we now will be broadcasting 10 of the Thursday night NFL games live. And it was a pretty competitive race to bid for those rights. As you can imagine, there were a lot of players in that race. But the NFL chose us, I think. They chose us. And, to be honest, I don't have yet, I'm dying to understand what our experience is going to be for the sports fan, especially coming from ESPN, and I saw how we would use Watch ESPN, and if you guys ever used it, it's extremely great. But I still see, we have a lot of research at ESPN, the mobile experience of viewing a full NBA game, full NFL game on a mobile or a tablet device is usually done out of necessity, right? You're stranded in the parking lot, you've got to see it, right? There's still the preference to watch live sports on TV, and those micro moments, whether they're highlights, and that's what's getting a lot of the consumption on the mobile side. On Twitter, I'd really love to see, as you guys would play imagine, what's great about us is our whole proposition with live, right? We are the live go-to resource for everything, for news and information and sports, right? We thrive in the sports arena. So it's going to be interesting how we complement a live game experience with all the conversation that's generated around Twitter or Periscope about what's happening around the match and the actual game. And that experience comes from everything from the actual league, to the talent, to the players, to the talent broadcasters from the ESPN talent analyzing the game, or whatever it might be, or Fox Sports. But it should be a completely unique and original experience that we haven't seen before. Because my guess is Marco, we're not just going to broadcast the game, right? Anybody else could have done that. We're definitely going to add a Twitter flavor to it about conversation and kind of watching in our public arena, which should be exciting, but I don't have much info on that, unfortunately.
And adding for your clients, I think you tap into that double screen experience, and that's where you can play a huge role, because it's not necessarily watching a necessity, but watching along you're watching your TV. At the end of the day, you're texting, you're sending messages.
And one fundamental difference, remember, with Twitter versus some other platforms is we're a completely open platform, right? So you completely get broadcasted to everybody else, where other platforms are more closed within your safe space, family or friends. Here you just become a completely broadcast medium. So it's great to, again, to see everybody in this room, we could be watching, having a bar experience with the NFL game. And I think that's what kind of intrigued the NFL to come to us. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm really excited about it. So great question.
Check your shirt.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, many of us are working on startup projects, right? And I think most of us need to have a mobile app. But I think that in Latin America, the price of mobile phones is kind of expensive compared to the US, and not every household has one. I guess at some point, we want to penetrate Latin America. My question is, what would be the best strategy to target and engage millennials in that aspect?
Millennials?
Millennials, yes.
I mean, so as far as the cost of the devices, you're seeing that drop drastically. These Chinese Android smartphones are like $50 or less. I think the sweet point is like $30 a handset. And in some countries, I know there's import duties and stuff like that, like Argentina doubles or triples the cost of the device. But you're starting to see the parts being shipped and then cobbled together in those countries, you know? And so I think, assume that the market is going to keep growing, and the people of all ages are going to start getting smartphones, and in 5 years, you'll have 75% smartphone penetration or something. I don't know. This is my assumption.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. But as far as millennials, I mean, these guys can probably start off you 50 million millennials tomorrow in Latin America, you know, through the different platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take that one, but I completely agree. Don't worry about, I think, the adoption side of the smartphone. It's every day becoming much, much more accessible. Whether, again, either be subsidized by some of the operators as a very low entry point, to, again, companies that are just kind of repurposing Chinese phones and giving them at a very low entry point. So I wouldn't worry about that so much. The millennial side, again, you can utilize, what I encourage you is utilize the pipes that already exist, right? So the pipes, Google's got the most incredible pipes, Facebook's got great pipes, we've got great pipes. Utilize and use the targeting capabilities that we have to really make sure your message and your experience is reaching them, connecting, and driving that action you want. But use the pipes that exist, again, and scale it. I mean, our platforms are completely scalable, so you can have one person completely getting your message out there and driving whatever objective you want.
And I think the only thing that I'll add to that is, because I agree 100%, I wouldn't be worried about penetration, because you already have almost 200 million people connected on mobile devices, which is almost not quite the size of the mobile population in the US, but it's pretty darn close. There is a lot of millennials in Latin America because we tend to be younger than other continents. I will be more worried about what are you doing that is going to differentiate you with that market, and how are you going to be connected with them, because the people are there, the devices are there, the technology is there to get to them. Is what are you telling them? What's your value? Why will they want to talk to you and spend time with your product and buy it?
So if I may add, so for example, the naming is something as simple as that. We have an English naming. Should we also have release the Spanish version of the branding? Would that be a good
way
idea?
going to say Twitter, Google, Facebook is all the same name. Yahoo, when it was Yahoo, it was all the same name in Latin America. MSN was MSN in Latin America, and we never changed the names.
Mastercard on Spanish, brand, Maestro? Or is
That was a whole product that we had.
Oh, okay.
But I wouldn't recommend, personally, I wouldn't recommend to, because then you become your brand, it doesn't become your brand. So you lose the impact there.
I think one follow-up thing.
And just don't get fixated on millennials, because at the end of the day, they're not very loyal. So remember, you know, we have the Facebook, we have the Twitters, they come and go. Now it's Snapchat, tomorrow who else? So I think it's
very sexy.
Look at the bigger picture, look at the long run, not the short term, because at the end of the day, where's the spending power? There is not there yet. They want it free.
And so my follow-up though for the devices, think like, you have to also think like what Carlos was saying earlier, build towards the devices they have in their pockets, because a $50 or $30 Android phone is equivalent to the iPhone 2 or 3 or whatever it is, you know, like it's 4 years back of processing power, so you don't build something that only works on a Nexus 6, you know, because you have like less than 1% of the market will be able to run whatever that at full capacity.
Yeah, and Google has a lot of free developing tools that you can use to actually build faster mobile websites. To your point, not necessarily even an app, but a website that almost looks like an app for nothing. And that works perfectly on an Android inexpensive device. Excellent.
Thank you. We're wrapping up, right?
Yeah, sorry. Hopefully they'll stick around for a little bit in case you guys have any questions. But
Guys, this was great. It's all